For many of us growing up in the 80s and 90s, television provided a sense of stability. In some cases, TV families served in place of our own. Not only did these surrogate TV families keep us latchkey kids company, they taught us some pretty important lessons along the way. In this episode of the show, we pick some fictional father figures to go head-to-head in an all-out brawl to see who's crowned the best TV dad ever. Don't make us turn this car around. This is Wayback Attack.
Welcome to Wayback Attack. My name is Brian Grantham, and sitting across the family table of lessons is Preston Burt. Preston, are you ready to tell me some really cheesy jokes?
I'm not a great dad joke teller, so I don't have much on hand, but I do enjoy a good dad joke.
Yeah, I am real bad with the my kids are always telling me they're hungry and me being like, well, I'm daddy. Nice to meet you.
Oh, no. You're one of those.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because, my dad didn't do dad jokes, really, that I can ever recall. But my ex-stepdad was full of them. So.
Yeah. Well, dad jokes weren't really a thing when we were kids. Mm-hmm. They were just corny jokes.
Right.
And every dad tells, a corny joke or is goofy, but... the brand didn't exist.
Right.
Now it's a rite of passage almost.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're closer together.
That's right. I've spent so long being so far away from you, and then I didn't get to see you for so long. I figured, look, we need to make up for lost time and just get closer together and bond.
It has been a very long time because I think the last time we saw each other was when we recorded.
That's right.
Yeah, so 2 months ago.
Yeah. You live a few minutes away, but we just don't, we had Christmas and we had other things popping up, but I'm glad to be back.
Me too.
And I'm glad to be talking about TV dads.
Well, there was something, since we didn't do a Christmas episode, I did have something I was going to do for that episode. I think last year you got me, and so this year I would get you.
Oh my word. I was not expecting anything, and oh my word. Okay. Oh! Can you see? Let's see. Check it out. Dude, this is too cool. I got one boglin. I got two boglins.
Unfortunately, it's not the one that you liked.
No. These are awesome. Bog of Bones and Crazy Clown. We were just talking about this before the show because I was looking at yours and admiring yours because I thought they only came out with these with the black box version, but they actually had a classic version.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the back of that box, I think it has the whole family tree.
Right.
And so you have those three. Those ones are a little bit smaller, and I did wind up getting one of the king ones. Uh-huh. So, but yeah, I had a boglin when I was a kid, and maybe a year ago I was like, I want to get a boglin again, and I did not realize they did a Kickstarter to restart the line, and I only saw videos of people buying boglins, and they're so expensive.
Yeah. And
so the Kickstarter finally came out, and so I found these at Walmart, and I called you and was like, or I texted you, I think, and I showed you these things. There was only a couple left, and so I wound up buying all of them. And then you went.
So we talked about this because he has them on his shelf. I don't think you can see them. They're on the very top shelf behind Brian. And I was commenting on them. I was like, yeah, you texted me that. I wasn't super motivated because I know they're kind of expensive. And so I waited a couple of days. Then I went by and checked out to see if they had them. Mm-hmm. And they were gone. Now I know why they were gone, because you bought them. But, dude, I super appreciate this. This is one of those things where, it's such a luxury item. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't going to get it. I was like, it'd be really cool to have. I never had a boglin growing up. But, one, I can't find them. Mm. And two, when it's just money I didn't need to spend. But as a gift, woo! Awesome.
And the cool thing is let me grab one. So, unfortunately, these boglins... they are all beat up. like kids have played with them like crazy on the toy aisle. But the Boglins have like where you can put a hole in it so you can stick your hand in and still operate it and like do the eyes and the mouth and stuff like that. A common complaint is that people feel like they need to be bigger because adult hands don't fit in them well. But that's
part of the charm.
I argue that they're kids' toys, and it's not their fault that you're nostalgic for them.
Right. This is the one that I wanted, Brian. I couldn't remember. There was a jack-o'-lantern one.
Yep.
That was not the primary one I wanted. It was this one.
Okay. Well, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
This is very cool. Wow. Well, I don't have anything for you, so we get to role reversal here.
I felt so bad because I was gonna wrap them, and then I never got around to it. And then tonight I was like, "Oh crap! I need to wrap these things." And then I was like, "I'll just put them in a box," because I have a bunch of boxes. And then I was like, didn't have boxes that were big enough, so I was like, "Oh well, this bag will do."
Got the GameStop bag.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. So what else has been up with you?
Oh gosh. Well, we hadn't seen each other since Christmas. So, we had Christmas, we had snow days, we had I went and saw movies, I've been watching TV. The usual stuff. What about you?
Well, I started watching the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Something I wanted to talk about too. I started watching that. And not retro related, but started watching Peacemaker on HBO.
Oh yes, okay.
Which is a spinoff of the Suicide Squad.
Well, it could be retro because that comic character's old.
Sure. And then as far as movie goes, I saw Spider-Man. What was the
No Way Home?
No Way Home. Yes, they're confusing me. So I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, which was excellent, and I saw Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley, which was really cool and had a really cool aesthetic.
Did you see the trailer for Pinocchio?
No.
He's doing a claymation Pinocchio.
I'm not watching
And it's
that.
the original
I don't care.
story of Pinocchio.
We've talked about this before. I'm so over reinterpretations of Snow White, which they just announced Disney's going to be doing again.
Yeah, but this isn't the Disney
Cinderella, Peter Pan. I'm over it.
And this is a spoiler if you've ever read the actual Pinocchio story. But in Pinocchio, I don't know if this is going to be in this movie. I assume it will be. But Pinocchio kills Jiminy Cricket. He gets mad at him and stomps on him and kills him. So,
well, there's a plot twist.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I have to imagine that will be in his movie. So, Book of Boba Fett's awesome.
It is.
Have you seen the discourse where people are talking about this is not Star Wars? Like someone did a picture of like the kids like in their hover bikes, and it was like, there's not a single thing of Star Wars in this shot.
No, I mean I have seen that, but that's not true because Star Wars has always been kind of goofy.
I think I like this show. The first, I think the second episode, I was like, wow, there's hardly any talking in this episode. It's crazy, but
I haven't seen the most recent episode. I think it just came out today, but I look forward to watching it, and I heard someone describe it as pure joy for Star Wars fans who, in the dark times of no Star Wars movies and stuff like that, they only had their toys to play with, and they would create these plot lines and stuff on their own using just their imaginations. And this kind of feels like a kid in a candy store being able to finally tell, a story of their favorite character.
Yeah, and I do like... part of the thing that I want from Star Wars is just totally original stories with original characters, but just set in that universe, right? And there's enough that has happened enough in video games where I think it's a no-brainer for them to do it. And I know they're going to do. It's not an Old Republic show, but there's going to be something that's like an older thing. But I think that they've done a good job in telling their own story while also like having the fanfare and having the huts in it and stuff like that, and like in a way that makes sense, and like having bringing in other characters like the Black Wookiee. I can't remember his name. It was Black something. I don't know. But he's from something else, right? I don't remember if it's a book or a game, but like it's cool to be able to bring in other parts of that universe, a big budget thing. So
yeah, I like I like being surprised with new characters like that. Like that was the first, seeing Book of Boba Fett is the first time I ever saw that new Wookiee character. Because I stopped being like a uber Star Wars fan a while ago.
Right.
So it's cool to be on the other side of just like a normal person. Like, oh wow, that guy is cool, and then find out later that he was part of some book or TV show or game or something.
Right.
So yeah, no, it's a whole new world. I like it.
Well, I figured I don't want to waste too much time because I think this is going to be a pretty action-packed episode.
I think so.
And I will say this episode was actually suggested to us from someone that you're very familiar with, Preston.
Yes. So my good friend John, he's out in Texas, and he is the host of the Arcade Repair Tips podcast. And you can find him on Twitter at JediJohnL. And he said, Squared Stiff, if you're looking to do another bracket on Wayback Attack, here's an idea. How about one with the best 80s and 90s TV sitcom dads in honor of Bob Saget?
All right.
And that was too good of an idea to pass up.
It's better than the idea that we were originally had.
So here we go. We're doing it. A TV brawl for dads. Who's the best?
Yeah, and I think it's cool that it's in honor of Bob Saget, whose passing was at the beginning of the year and really shocked a lot of people and kind of set the tone for the way that this year has gone so far.
Yeah.
And so I think this is cool that this is kind of like the Danny Tanner presents the best dads of TV.
Right.
So
I was looking at some of these lists that have already been compiled. We're not the first to think of this, ranking of TV dads or anything like this. And so there are a lot out there. And Danny Tanner, played by Bob Saget, always ranks in the top 5, usually the top 3, sometimes top, very top of like the quintessential TV dad. So we didn't want to sully his good name by putting him in the list. For fear that hey, we're honoring this guy and he's ranking number 6, but we both do think highly of him. I really enjoyed his character. He was so wholesome,
Yes.
like there was on
Full House.
On Full House, everybody had their role. Joey was the goofy one, and John Stamos was the cool one. Danny was the practical one. Yes, he was a little uptight, but he was the voice of reason and a grounding force on that show. Yeah. And Bob Saget really played it really well, especially because, in real life, Bob Saget
total opposite.
Well, I mean, as far as like his character, I've heard nothing but good things about the man. Very kind soul.
Yes.
But like his comedy, he was a very dirty comedian, and it just was very weird to see that image that he had on Full House was different than his on-stage persona.
And it wasn't just Full House, right? It was also on America's Funniest Home Videos. And I remember the first glance that I had, or I guess the first glance I had at that side of him was one of my cousins gave me like a portable TV, and so I would watch it at night and like under my covers, or like I would go to the bathroom and just sit in the bathroom and watch it. And I was watching David Letterman, and he was on there, and he was talking about the videos that they can't show on TV from America's Funniest Home Videos. And so, and then like him being on late night, he was able to be more of himself. Yeah. And I was just like, oh wow, like this is totally different from him on Full House and on America's Funniest Home Videos.
I watched a documentary on a joke called The Aristocrats, which is the dirtiest joke known to man. But what makes it interesting is each person, in building up to this joke, tells it in such a unique way, like that's their own personal style. And his was one of the dirtiest imaginable. It was so awful, but it was so funny. So rest in peace, Bob. You provide some great entertainment for us. We appreciate it. And in your honor tonight, we are looking at other TV dads who may not be quite as good as you were, but hopefully give you some good competition.
I want to look like these models.
Why?
Because they're beautiful.
Well, so are you.
Oh, yeah? Well, show me one girl in here with this round face and these Charlie Brown cheeks.
Honey, people come in all different shapes and sizes. Everybody wishes they could change something about themselves. Heck, when I was a kid, I wished I could have been more like that guy on The Incredible Hulk.
So let's take a look at the brackets for tonight.
Well, that's right, Preston. This is gonna be a tough battle between some of the biggest names in TV dad history.
Okay, I appreciate the enthusiasm. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to match it, but yes. So for our best TV dad ever contest, we have 8 grand names to present to our viewers and our listeners that are from some of the most beloved TV shows of the 80s and 90s, and these were the central father figures on those shows. So, coming in at a number 1 seed, we've got Mike Brady. Mike Brady from The Brady Bunch.
He's going to be a tough one to beat.
He is. Number 2, we've got Phil Banks from none other than the great TV show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
For number 3, we've got Dan Connor from Roseanne. He's definitely a driving force for that show and for that family.
Salt of the earth guy.
Oh, yeah.
At number 4, we have Dr. Jason Seaver from Growing Pains.
And at number 5, we have, I guess he ended as Captain Carl Winslow for the Chicago PD. So
that's right, from the show Family Matters.
Oh, yeah. Family Matters.
And number 6, coming in, maybe not a name you thought of instantly, but a central figure in the 80s, Stephen Keaton from Family Ties.
And coming in at number 7, we have Jack Arnold from The Wonder Years.
And rounding out our Elite 8, Willie Tanner from Alf. Everybody's go-to TV father figure.
You know what's amazing about Willie Tanner is I've been watching a lot of clips of Alf recently, and all I can think of is how similar he is to Gary Oldman.
He does.
And so I was like, oh man, they should like reboot this or do a movie or something and have Gary Oldman play Willie Tanner. But no.
True Hollywood story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
All right, so we have quite a smattering of decades represented, of TV roles represented, TV shows, and hopefully you are familiar with most of these. If not, we're going to introduce you to some of our favorite TV dads. Were there anybody that you thought about including but didn't?
Yes, because to me there was like one of the first names I thought of was somebody that I was like, never in a million years am I going to put him on my list.
Okay.
And it was Bill Cosby.
So that was also number 1 for me. And I know you can separate the art from the person, but in this case, I don't want to throw oil on fire. So we're not going to do that. And another one I wanted to do, because I thought it'd be great fodder for the show, but he's just not a great father figure, honestly. And that's Al Bundy.
Yeah.
From Married with Children.
Yep.
I mean, I know he can have his redeeming qualities, and he was really entertaining, but you'll notice from my picks, even though there's some that are rough around the edges, there's a good heart in there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could say Al had a good heart.
Okay.
He was well-meaning for himself. Yeah, there was a couple other people that I felt were father figures, but I was like, well, it's kind of, I don't think that they would do well up against some other people. And so, I tried to pick people. I'm usually pretty bad at picking off-the-wall things. Mm-hmm. And so I tried not to do that. I tried to stick. I snuck one off-the-wall guy in Willie Tanner. And, but, he was, honestly, Willie Tanner was, like the second person I thought of.
That's so funny.
Yeah. I loved Alf as a kid.
We were doing this list, and you had your 4, and you put Willie Tanner. And I honestly thought you were talking about Danny Tanner using the character for Bob Saget, and I was like, are you sure you have the right name? He's like, no, this is from Alf. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, anyway, all right, so we have our top 8 laid out for you. Let's take a look one more at the chart before we dive right into our top seed and our bottom seed battle royale.
You don't care if Buddy picks on little girls. I mean, little girls.
Look, I don't tell my kid who to pick on.
Maybe you ought to tell him not to pick on anybody.
What are you trying to do, preach to me?
No, I'm just trying to discuss this in an adult manner.
Well, don't tell me what to do. Buzz off. Off my property. Or would you like to be helped off?
You think you could do that? I'm not a little girl, you know.
You I can handle.
Well, you I'd like to see try. I'm just gonna reason with him. Reasoning, calm, cool reasoning. Oh, shut up.
All right, so our number 1 seed was my pick, Mike Brady from the classic TV show The Brady Bunch. Now, I know we said this was 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
This was from a TV show in the 70s. However, I grew up watching this show.
Yeah.
It defined it didn't define my childhood. It was part of our childhoods. I would imagine yours as well. And so I'm bringing it in because he is one of the ultimate father figures on television, right. From the 70s through the 90s, anybody who watched it. And, we saw a clip just then. He actually heard his own voice of reason because he is a voice of reason throughout the show. And talks his kids down off the ledge, very calm figure. But I want to share this clip because Mike Brady, he almost didn't pull his punches.
I know, and he's got those baby blues.
Ain't he a looker?
How do you think they got his eyes to be so blue? Oh
I
my
don't know.
gosh.
That's Technicolor right there, baby.
Now, let me ask you a question. Where did you watch this show?
I don't know. They showed it on TBS. They showed it, just on Saturday afternoons on some Fox station probably.
I was trying to think if it was on the Family Channel. Because I remember seeing it when I was a kid, but I just couldn't remember what it was on.
And then I feel like it was one of the earlier Nick at Night shows too.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it was everywhere. It was in syndication for a while. I should have started off earlier by saying Mike Brady is played by Robert Reed on the Brady Bunch, which was a show on ABC. It ran all the way from September 26, 1969, so even earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
All the way to March 8th, 1974. 5 seasons and 117 episodes. So it hit that magic 100 number and was able to be in syndication for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I doubt I've seen every episode.
Oh, no.
But,
and it was one of those shows that was such a hit it spawned copycats and that kind of thing too. So it was a real it was a real force to be reckoned with, so much so that they wound up making movies in the 90s, So.
And Gary Cole
yeah.
from Office Space was in that role. And man, he did such a great job parodying him. It was great. Are there anything you remember specifically about Mike Brady?
So like when you think of like the quintessential TV dad, like getting down on their knee and being like putting the hand on the shoulder and being like, hey, let me talk to you about something real quick. Like that is probably one of the first people that comes to mind when you think about that.
Yeah. There are a bunch of things, a bunch of clips out there of him sitting the child down and having a real heart-to-heart conversation. But what always struck me about Mike Brady is that like he never raised his voice.
Yeah.
He was always cool and collected. And I think he bridged that gap of like Andy Griffith in the 60s,
right,
50s and 60s to the Al Bundy of the late 80s and early 90s, right? Where it was like raw and real or exaggerated versus like the exaggerated goody two shoes of right. Andy Griffith. And so he was that like calm and cool and collected TV father for a whole generation, but in a really grounded way.
Yeah, so. I agree. I think he's a great pick, and I think there's no doubt why he earned his number 1 seed in this bracket.
But that's just a seeding. Who's to say who will win? So up next, our contender in the number 8 seed.
Really want to help? You teach him not to fight.
Well, he already knows how to do that. Look at his face.
Excuse me, Alf. I know whereof I speak. You see, when I was about Brian's age, there was a bully lived on our block who was always picking on me.
Whereof? Sorry. I'm still fascinated by the oddities of the English language.
Anyway, this bully, His name was Clarence, you see.
Oh, ha! Tough neighborhood! Ah! Ah!
All right, so for my pick, Willie Tanner. He's not someone that really comes up a whole lot when you're thinking about TV dads. But like I said earlier, he was one of the first people that I thought of. He was played very well by Max Wright, and Alf was on TV from it was an NBC show from September 22nd, 1986 to March 24th, 1990. It ran for 4 seasons and had 102 episodes. So just like you're talking about, you got to hit that magic 100 number, baby. They just did it.
Barely, by the skin of their teeth.
You know, it was crazy because NBC, like, their first season was okay, but their second season, they were like, I think number 5. Like, they were huge. And then the third season dropped down to 11, and then the fourth season, it like tanked. And NBC had told them, yeah, we're going to do it for another year, and then they didn't. They're like, no. And so the fourth season ended in a cliffhanger, and then that was just the end of the show. And so they wound up doing a TV movie to finish the story, because like whoever the head of the network was like, hey, listen, like, we kind of did you wrong, and so we want to make it right because we think you had another season in you.
At least give us some closure.
Yeah, and so they let him have a TV movie.
Well, that's cool.
So,
it's crazy that it only ran for 4 seasons, because it felt like in the 80s Alf was everywhere.
Oh yeah, man. Like, I mean, it was like him, you know, Spud McKenzie, Bart Simpson. Like, if you think of like childhood mascots that you saw everywhere, Alf was like on top of everything.
I mean, he made it into the cartoon all-stars.
Yeah. And, you know, what's crazy about that is, you know, Alf was not a cartoon, right? But they actually did wind up having 2 different cartoon shows. And, you know, he got back in popularity in the late 90s, early 2000s with the 1010 220 commercials. You remember those?
Yeah.
And then they did a new show recently in 2004 with Alf, where it was like a talk show, I think. And so, you know, they've had a couple things to try to resurrect the character. But yeah, you know, like... Well,
when they bring back the characters, they bring back Willie Tanner, because he was really the glue that held the show together.
You know, Willie Tanner was not a great dad. You know, you talked about Mike Brady and how he was usually very calm and collected. Willie Tanner was not that. He was always yelling and very upset. You know, Alf was annoying, and like that was like a running thing, was like how annoying Alf was. And like there were times where like Willie Tanner would have someone teach Alf a lesson by like one of his friends was a psychiatrist, and so Alf started like psychoanalyzing everybody all the time, and they're like, Alf, you're really annoying, you need to stop this. And so he got his psychiatrist friend to come and psychoanalyze Alf. Alf didn't like it. He's like, you're really annoying. And they're like, yeah, Alf, so are you. And he's like, oh, I get it now. You know, so
you do a really good Alf.
Ha!
I don't know that I've ever heard you impersonate Alf before, but it's quite good. The 2 words that I wrote down that I thought of to describe Willie Tanner. You know, Mike Brady, cool and collected. Willie Tanner, neurotic and exasperated. Yes. He's always just flustered and frantic, and is, you know, like, seems like he has a nervous tick almost.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're that nervous and exasperated, if you're really putting the focus on the kids.
Well, here's the thing. Here's like my argument for him. He's a social worker, so he's a good guy, right?
Oh yeah.
He is also like a ham radio nut, like enthusiast.
He's got some dad qualities, right
model
there.
trains.
Oh, total
in
dad.
the garage. And in fact, that's how he met Alf. He was doing ham radio stuff. Alf was in his spaceship, picked up on the frequency, and wound up crashing into his garage because that's where the frequency was coming from. And due to his good nature, he took in Alf and hid him from the government, because the government, that was like a running thing in the show, was the government was trying to find Alf, and he was hiding them from the government. And there was many times that like their whole life could have been ruined, so it was so close to it happening, and you know, Willie Tanner wound up saving the day. So
wow. There are no notes that Brian's referring to for any of this right now. This is all just from his noggin. He's very passionate about Alf.
Yeah.
Wow, you're very invested.
Yeah. So I will say, Mike Brady wins this because you're right. Like, he is just like, Willie Tanner is not a calm, collected guy. Like,
I have to say that, when we put up a list of, if you ask someone top TV dads, I would argue that you are one of the very few who would name Willie Tanner as even an option. So for that alone, I think Mike Brady is going to win.
Yeah. Hey, at least we gave Willie Tanner his due. What's funny about Willie Tanner is that character, neurotic and stuff. Max Wright was not that much far off of that character. He hated the puppet.
Oh no.
He hated playing second fiddle to this puppet, and he actually grabbed the puppet and attacked it one time. He was so mad at it. Apparently this whole show was so off the rails because it's a puppet show, and so the set is 4 feet off the ground and there's trap doors everywhere, and so it's like a hazard. It would take, for like one show, it would take 20 to 30 hours for them to film it.
Wow.
Because they kept having to reset the trap doors. Alf was controlled by 3 people, and then in the first season there was like someone, like a little person that wore a suit sometimes to run around, but like all the actors, it was like a nightmare to work on this show. And on the very last episode, Max Wright, he did his final scene, went out to his trailer, packed his stuff, and left. He didn't even say goodbye to anybody. he was so over it. So
he wanted to leave Willie Tanner
Yep.
just for, just on the stage, right?
Yep.
Man. Well, that's where we leave Willie Tanner because he does not move forward in our bracket. We're advancing Mike Brady. All right. Up next, we're going to jump all the way down to the 4 and 5 seeds.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be a tough battle.
This is going to be tough. So at number 4, we have Dr. Jason Seaver.
It's just that I feel like everybody's gonna laugh at me. And some of those people did laugh.
Mike, you're never going to be able to please everybody.
Yeah, well, tonight I didn't please anybody.
Except yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what you did tonight took real courage, Mike. I admire you.
All right, Dr. Jason Roland Seaver. Man, if I think of someone that, we talked about how Mike Brady is like a calm, collected guy. I think Mike Seaver is he's a little bit past he is a calm and collected guy, but there are times that he, you see him getting upset at his kids or, this and that and the choices that they make, but he was always there to make the right decision and help, parent his kids in a great way.
All right. One of the things I think we should consider when we're talking about these characters is, could you imagine Dr. Jason Seaver as your own father? Can you imagine
Yes.
being his son? That would be torture. This guy is a psychiatrist
Yes.
who treats in-home everything's, screwing with your mind, knows just the twist of the word to say, analyze you the whole time. Oh my gosh, I'd be walking on eggshells the whole time.
See, really, I think it would be really interesting to have a father like that, because I think that it would teach you how to diffuse situations, right, and to how to take a step back and to think about what's happening to you. I don't know. I think that they would have good skills to impart, in that aspect. So
I do think that he was a very balancing figure in the household. So to that, I can give him credit. And you're right, he is rather cool and collected. Well, not cool, but calm. And
he's pretty cool.
Was he?
Alan Thicke. Alan Thicke was cool.
Alan Thicke ruled. Alan Thicke was.
I will say, Dr. Seaver had some pretty cool ties in the run of Growing Pains. So
okay. Well, Alan Thicke, who played Dr. Jason Seaver, he was a cool guy. He was on a bunch of different shows, and he had some songwriting credits. He composed the song for the theme song for Different Stroke, for Facts of Life. He was really, really talented, and we know his son is really talented as Robin Thicke. But
Maybe he didn't learn the right lessons. So maybe Alan Thicke. See, this is how good of an actor Alan Thicke is. Is that I don't know. I guess it's funny. Alan Thicke's real son has made some questionable decisions in his life.
Yes.
But also, his TV son kind of got out there too.
He
did in a wild way.
Yeah.
So.
We had some wild issues going on there.
Yeah. This show.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Tell me about the show.
This show was on ABC. September 24th, 1985 to April 25th, 1992. 7 seasons and 166 episodes.
Solid. I loved this show.
Yes.
And it's one that I think still holds up pretty well. If you were to go back and watch it, it'd still be really enjoyable. I don't know if you're like a kid nowadays and watching it would be that great. But like for me, it still holds up.
I think it's interesting too because the show was on the air for so long, like they did the tropes of those shows, right? You added a kid, and then but it was like
Chrissy.
Yeah, and you got to see the kids grow up, right?
Oh yeah.
And then like once the kid got too old, then you brought in the homeless kid, and you let the homeless kid move in.
Well, and they had like the goofy neighbor with Boner and all kinds of stuff. I love that show. It was really weird that it was another one of those shows where the dad had an office at home, kind of like the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
That was a little odd. But other than that, I mean, I know that was for the sake of the show, but I enjoyed it.
It was actually for the sake of the story. So he became an at-home practitioner because his wife went back to work and she became a reporter. And so for her to go back to work, he wound up working from home so that he could take care of the kids and raise the family.
All right, I didn't say it wasn't part of the plot.
I'm just saying.
I meant it was a convenient way for them to have.
I think that's also a feather in his cap for being a good dad. So
that is a good point, Brian. Choosing a job choice for his wife to succeed. That's great. That's a good partnership, and that's a great example for dads to make.
Yeah, exactly. So
good call. All right. Well, I applaud your selection here, but next up, we've got number 5, another one of your choices.
I know.
So you're gonna have to make a really hard call here.
I know who's gonna win. So
because we got number 5, Carl Winslow.
I remember to win Humphrey here, I had to shoot water into a clown's mouth at 10 cents a try. $38 later, we had him. Laura, in those days, you were Daddy's little girl. Man, if I could have frozen time, I think I would have kept you 6 years old forever. But I couldn't. And now you've grown into a beautiful young lady. And sweetheart, I promise to try to treat you like one from now on.
All right, Preston, Carl Winslow. He is a great dad.
No doubt about it. In that clip we just saw, you could hear a pin drop hanging on every word because he was offering some fatherly wisdom.
Yes.
And he did so almost every episode.
He was very good. He was played, of course, by Reginald Vell Johnson. The reason I laugh is his real name, because that's his stage name. His real name is Reginald Vell Johnson. So he just took out the space and made Vell Johnson one word for his stage name.
That's cool.
So this show, crazy enough, was on 2 networks. It was on ABC and CBS.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. So the ABC run was from September 22nd, 1989 to July 17th, 1998. And that was the first 8 seasons. And then season 9 was on CBS. Oh, no. The 98 was I didn't break them apart. So the last year ended in 1998, and that was on CBS.
Okay.
And they had a total run of 215 episodes. But yeah, I guess ABC dropped them, and then CBS was like, well, their ratings are still actually really good.
They're like, we're CBS. We kind of suck. Yeah. So, if it's second tier for them, it's still number 1 for us.
So they picked it up for a year and then was like, I guess not. So,
well, it was a really good show, and I had recently read that Reginald Vell Johnson, like, he was about to quit acting, and then he got everything all at once. He got Die Hard, he got Family Matters, he was doing XYZ, and it really just came all at once. But to our benefit, because I can't picture anybody else in this role.
I know, he was so perfect. Are you one of those people that, and I don't know if this is a thing or if I have made it up, are you one of those people that thinks that he is the same person in Die Hard and in Family Matters?
I do like this idea that it's like an overarching, world.
He was a cop in California. Something happened. He had to go
change his name.
Yeah, change his name and move to Chicago. But he was still a cop, and so.
I honestly, this isn't just the second thing he's been a cop in. I think he's been a cop in like 4 or 5 things. He's the perfect police officer.
Yeah, I almost said, well, he was also a cop in the Die Hard video game. He was a police officer. He rose through the ranks in the show. So he started off as a police sergeant, and then became lieutenant, and then retired as a police captain with the Chicago Police Department. And I will say he is a great dad, but there are some things that kind of knock him down a little bit.
Okay.
So he would usually act in his own self-interest, especially when it came to Urkel.
That's right.
Now, there are plenty of episodes where you see his love for Steve and that kind of thing. But there are plenty of times where, like, there was an episode where Steve was going to have to move to Russia, and he convinced Eddie to offer or to let Steve live with him so that Steve couldn't ask him to move in. And then something happened, and then Steve asked him to move in, and he was not going to do it until Eddie put pressure on him to let him move in. So
that's not setting a good example for your kids of how to treat each other.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a demerit.
And then he also, he would also have issues with Harriet sometimes where
I would have issues with Harriet.
Harriet would do something nice for him.
Oh, okay.
And then, but she would like keep her cards close to her chest, and then she'd be like, "All right, so we planned vacation," and she had planned it for what Carl wanted to do, but she's like, "All right, Carl, we planned vacation," and he's like, "Oh, did we plan vacation?" And he would get it all, "I'm the man of the house" type of thing going on, and then she'd be like, "Yeah, it's the vacation that you wanted to do," and he was like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, Carl had a little bit of an ego that was easily wounded.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the plot lines fell around that. But he did have to put up with Steve Urkel, who wasn't even going to be the point of the show, and then became the main character in the show.
I know.
So there's some friction there. I understand it, but when you're a dad, you got to rise above.
And it's so crazy to think how big Steve Urkel came, because he was written as just like a one-off character for season 1, and then like they did wind up like stretching out and doing crossovers with other shows. So there was an episode of Full House where Urkel was in California for some reason, and he was on that show with those kids. And then there was an episode with Blossom when they were starting Blossom off. Their daughter, what's her name? What? The daughter on Family Matters.
Laura Winslow.
Yeah, she went and I guess met Blossom.
Oh, wow.
Like she was on that show for 2 episodes, which makes sense because this show in itself was a spinoff from Perfect Strangers.
Oh, right.
And so because Harriet was on,
they did that all the time.
Yeah. So
I don't know if you've seen it, but for our listeners, if you haven't, you need to check this out. So that they're making a reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Oh, really? You
I didn't know
this?
that.
Okay, but it's just like a straight dramatic.
Oh, really?
Retelling of a down and out kid from Philadelphia coming to a rich parent, Uncle Phil's rich house, but it's very straight and like drama. And so people are like, "What? This is not funny at all," and that's why we loved it. So SNL on a very recent episode, they did a parody of that, or made fun of that fact by reimagining another beloved character, which was Urkel, as a very serious, like hard gangster kind of guy, and very threatening. Did I do that? It's really cool. So check out the SNL reimagining of Urkel being brought back to the world. That's really funny.
It's funny too, since you brought up Uncle Phil. Uncle Phil was also on this show.
Oh, wow. As Uncle Phil?
I think so. I know that I don't remember what all the thing was around it, but I remember Uncle Phil being in the living room and having something to do with it.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah, all these interconnected shows spinning off of each other, marketing off of each other, trying to connect to a new audience. Hey, you can't judge them for that. Yeah. That's smart. But using your brain, you got to make a smart decision here.
Well, I know who I would pick. So who would you pick?
I would pick Jason Seaver.
Okay. I agree with you, and the reason I agree with you is because Carl's downsides, like his ego, and sometimes he's conniving and stuff like that. He is a good father. He teaches his kids the value of $1 because he's very cheap. But there are some really heavy episodes in Family Matters, like where Eddie is harassed by the police and Carl has to go and handle that and like call the cops out for stereotyping and racial prejudice and stuff like that. So there were some very good things that he did on the show. But yeah, I think Jason Seaver winds up taking it in this one.
Yeah, I think Carl is more often than not, a comic foil rather than like a father figure.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He definitely has those moments, but they're not as many as his just being a fun part of the show.
Yeah.
So in that regard, Jason Seaver, you're moving on.
Well, all right, Preston. Here comes the next breakdown between Dan Connor and Stephen Keaton. Who do you think's gonna take it?
I have my suspicions. These are both of my picks, so it's going to be like picking between one of my own children, which a father should never have to do. And let's see which father is going to come out on top. Here's Dan Connor.
Here's the roughest, toughest otter of them all. The Terminator.
Dad?
Yeah.
Can I have a taste of your beer?
Ah, you're too young, Deej.
Just a sip?
Nah, you wouldn't like it.
Please?
Okay, but just one. Remember that.
And that was Salt of the Earth, Dan Connor, from, of course, the spectacular 80s and 90s TV show Roseanne.
And now 2010s.
Yeah, the Connors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Still going at it with the same character.
Yep.
Which is surprising because he died.
I know. He had a heart problem.
Yeah. They offed that guy at the very end. But he was too good. They had to bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
They recognized they had to have that father figure.
Yeah. Yeah, he was an amazing father figure.
Yeah. He was. I love that show. I put him down as one of my picks because we've talked about Mike Brady and Jason Seaver and like these guys that were, I don't know, up on a pedestal of like what a father should be. I think Dan Connor is an example of what a father actually is in real life. We've talked before about how like Roseanne's their house was one of the most realistic house sets in all of TV.
Yeah.
And how they've gotten away from that now. And I wouldn't say that my family was like that, but I think the portrayal of that family was more similar to an actual American family than had ever really been portrayed before.
Yeah, and I definitely I feel like my family was not necessarily like that. I mean, there are similarities, but I definitely knew people like their house was just like that house, and like you see that dynamic of that family has, in families all the time in real life. So
yeah, he was a hard living kind of guy. He was, like I said, salt of the earth. Was he a mechanic?
He eventually became a mechanic.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, he wound up having a motorcycle shop, but when he was younger, him and Roseanne rode motorcycles and stuff like that. So they were those he had those skills.
Yeah. So the show, of course, is Roseanne, which aired October 18th, 1988, and ran until the original run until May 20th, 1997. Sorry, 1997. And then, of course, there was the 2018 revival, which started as Roseanne, changed its name when she left the show, and is now just the Connors, and he's kind of anchoring that show, which is awesome. So it had 10 seasons, 231 episodes, and of course John Goodman, the actor, is just incredible. He's been in so many different things, and so versatile, and he really, this is the case, like, no offense to your guy, Max Wright.
Yeah.
But like, John Goodman is such a good actor and has such a range, and it was really a coup for them to get him for the show, because he could anchor a movie, like Always or Arachnophobia or
Matinee.
Yeah, Matinee. The Babe. So many good movies. And I don't see Max Wright doing that. So yeah, he brought a level of authenticity to the role. I think that was really, really helpful. But what I love about him was that he goofs around a lot. He's humorous and just seems real authentic. I love his Halloween episodes.
Yes.
He really gets into the spirit of things. But just like real dads, there are those times when you have to be serious and you have to be heartfelt, and he does those, and he does as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you do see like the realistic relationship, like him and Roseanne do get in arguments, and him and his kids get into arguments and stuff like that, and you do see where he winds up going back and sitting down with them and talking to them, and especially with the kids. They're like all the kids had big bang out fights with him at some point, right? And with Darlene and David, like there was tons of them, and then gosh, I can't remember the other guy's name.
DJ?
No, not his other son-in-law.
I forget.
Mark.
Oh,
Mark, like him and Mark, had their back and forth and stuff. So you got to see it not with just his kids, but with his like son-in-laws also, and that relationship that they had. And I think that due to his acting skills, it is a very believable relationship, but still, like he still has very good lessons that he teaches and that kind of thing. So I think like a great dad.
Yeah. I don't know that I could, we talked about, can you imagine yourself with him as your dad? I don't know that I could imagine myself with him as my dad, but I could definitely imagine him as one of my friends' dads.
Yeah. My dad and him are very different. And so it would be hard for me to think of him like being my dad, but like, yeah, I could totally see like, oh, I'm friends with DJ or Darlene or whatever, and going over to the house, and like, I think that he and I would get along well.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I think he is a strong contender at the number 3 seed, but let's see who's next.
15 years old. And when I see Kimberly Blanton in a strapless evening gown, I don't look past her for the Bill of Rights.
I was 17 myself once, but I had principles. I had beliefs. Well, now that you mention it, I do recall working for Nixon for a couple of weeks in 1960.
Richard Nixon?
You see, there was this young Republican, Sandra Futterman. A real fascist, but she wore it well.
So if you're thinking of a name from Family Ties, the first name that comes to your mind is going to be Alex P. Keaton. But Alex P. Keaton would not be the name that he was without Stephen Keaton, the grounding force, the father figure from Family Ties. Did you watch the show growing up?
I remember it coming on. I had a friend that had an NES with Robbie the Robot, and I must have played at his house every night that this was on the air, because I remember his family watching it, but me and him would be in his room playing Nintendo games.
Well, it's a little bit, we're a little bit young for this show.
Yeah.
I grew up watching some of it, but I honestly don't know if we were catching reruns or whatever as a family, because this show started in 1982 in September and ran 7 seasons until May 14th, 1989, for a total of 176 episodes. So a lot of episodes, but I was born in 80, so it came on when I was 2.
Right.
That I think that might have been from the clip was from maybe the first season.
Yeah, it was a pilot episode
where he doesn't have a beard. And so yeah, I wasn't watching that when I was 2 years old. I couldn't have comprehended that. But this is one of those shows where it was, I probably got a little bit of enjoyment watching it back then,
right.
In the 80s, but it's a lot more enjoyable now as an adult and seeing yourself in the father role. The clip we saw was a really serious one and heartfelt, but there were those hints of humor there that made the show really good. But he's not just that open and loving guy. He's not just like the Mike Brady or the Andy Griffith. He is silly sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a clip of him, making Jennifer, his youngest daughter, practice driving, and they're driving in the kitchen, and he's got on a chauffeur's cap and a scarf and gloves and stuff, and so he cuts it up. He's silly, just like other dads are, but he's a lot more heartfelt and like raw and real because he used to be a hippie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it's interesting because a lot of these shows, the dad is nothing close to a hippie, right? And so it's interesting for I guess the time that this came out, he was a hippie, but also there was like a lot of politics in the show.
There was, it was very clear that Alex was a strong young Republican, and so there was a lot of infighting in the family because of those different ideals. But yeah, his portrayal was really cool too because, I'm sorry, I should mention the actor playing him was Michael Gross, who I actually have gotten to speak to on the phone personally because I interviewed him for one of the Tremors movies. There was a movie coming out. I was interviewing for a website, and Tremors: A Cold Day in Hell was out, and we Michael and I bonded over the fact that we were both Chicago Cubs fans.
Oh, nice.
But he was a really nice guy, and but anyway, one of the things that makes his character interesting is the fact that he was this former hippie and out there or like a radical, and now is in the 80s in a very buttoned up shirt kind of collared shirt way, trying to make his way in the consumeristic times of the 80s. Now he's trying to keep it real. He works in the public TV station like a PBS or something. But yeah, it's cool. His background is different to help inform how he deals with his kids. A little hippy dippy, but I like it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of history with this show, so I have to leave this one up to you.
Oh man, so I put Stephen Keaton in there. He probably wasn't necessarily anybody's first pick, right? But he is definitely middle of the road. So he probably should be rated more like a 4, like as far as like, on a scale of 1 to 10, he would be a 5, right? But in the sake of our seeding, he came in at number 6, and there's just no contest. The raw and the real Dan Connor,
all right,
number 3 takes it.
All right, well, that's exciting. I'm glad. I was rooting for Dan in that one. So, I think the next roundup is going to be tough. But before we get to the next round, we have one final bracket to go to.
We do. Number 2 seed versus number 7, Phil Banks versus Jack Arnold. Let's go to tape.
Will was doing just fine until you showed up. But now that you're back, you have responsibilities to him.
Look, we're still gonna take the trip.
Oh, bull! Bull! Will is not a coat that you hang in the closet, then pick it up when you're ready to wear it. His life goes on. He's not supposed to be here for you. You're supposed to be here for him.
You get off my back! You think I want this? It just happened! Now, when Will was a baby, I was scared.
Cut the crap, all right? Cut it! Because I've been there. But I didn't run out on my family. I was there every day for them, because that's what a man does.
Fine, son!
All right, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was one of those shows that was really, really funny, but then also had really serious, heartfelt episodes. They dealt with a lot on that show.
They really did. I made fun of the reboot that we talked about earlier and how it's just totally dramatic. The clip we just watched was one that was really, really dramatic when you saw it, but that wasn't the entirety of the show.
Right.
But just like so many of our other father figures in this TV competition, those TV dads, Uncle Phil really served that father figure role of being silly and being a foil, but also having those heartfelt moments.
Right. And I think that Uncle Phil, the role that he had through not just his family, but with him being a judge and how that impacted certain storylines and stuff like that, and some of the struggles that they had to talk about on that show. I think it really gave that father figure a big room to play in terms of how he tackles certain things and the types of conversations he has. So
well, I think Uncle Phil was a really good TV dad because it set him up in that role of being a role model.
Right.
So many of these families we look at, the dad was just the dad, he's part of the family, and you have those moments where they shine. But with Will being brought into this family from such a different background and from such a hard life, putting Phil there as like something you need to try to attain, like a level to try to attain, as far as how to present yourself, how to behave, how to interact. I think that was a really, really crucial role, and I think he did it really, really well.
Yeah. So, he was played by James Avery, and this was an NBC show that ran from September 10th, 1990 to May 20th, 1996. So it had 6 seasons and 148 episodes. I misspoke when I said he was a judge. He was a lawyer, but I feel like, did he become a judge? I feel like he became a judge at some point.
I thought he did.
So, but he was a lawyer, and he defended many people against unjust police brutality. And I do remember there was an episode specifically about that. And
it dealt with some real issues for sure, and of course some absurd ones as well. But James Avery is great, and for those of you who don't know, James Avery was the voice of Shredder. On Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And it's great. Like when you tell people that, like, yeah, that was Uncle Phil. Like people are like, what? But if you listen to it, like you can totally tell. And so the Shredder, that kind of shows his range. Shredder, not the best dad.
No, I would say the opposite. But Uncle Phil, even though he was not Will's real dad, he was Carlton's real dad.
Yep.
And he was great to
Vanessa?
No.
Vivian. No, it was Aunt Viv.
Yeah.
Who? Gosh.
We should have done our research more. But yeah, so he served that father figure role and was an actual father on the show. But so he was pulling double duty.
Yeah, I think you talk about how he was the butt of a lot of jokes. His weight he was often picked on for his weight. With the butler always calling him big guy and stuff like that. So, but deep down he had a huge heart, and I think that he's a great example of what a dad should be. So,
he was a judge. Confirmed.
Okay, good. I thought he was, but then my notes said lawyer, and I was like, so I guess he was a lawyer first and then became a judge.
Yeah.
So.
He's a judge. He's a lawyer, but he's a dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the best.
Yep.
Let's see if he can hold muster against our last dad, coming in at the number 7 seed, Jack Arnold from Wonder Years.
Dad, have you ever thought about your life?
Huh?
Oh, well, it's for school. I mean, if you had to write about it, what would you say?
Okay, time for a meaningful father-son exchange here. A thoughtful summing up.
I get up at 5 in the morning. I fight traffic. I bust my hump all day. I fight traffic again. And I come home. Then I pay my taxes. The end.
In a way, it kind of made you feel like you knew the guy.
Jack Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Some might look at a dad and say, he's a big teddy bear.
Yeah.
Jack Arnold's kind of a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
He is rough around the edges. He is gruff. He is tough. He is a 60s man's man. But like on so many of our other dads we've talked about, he does mean well.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries most of the time. But he does have, underneath that rough demeanor, he does have a heart of gold.
Yeah, he's one of those fathers that I'm sure, and I feel like she probably did it in the show, where the mom has to be like, look, your father means well.
Oh, totally. Yeah, the mom definitely has to explain away the dad so much. And the kids are like fearful of the dad, walking on eggshells around him all the time. But there's just enough glimpse of humanity in him and sweetness in him to keep you going. Like, you could watch almost the whole episode and you're like, geez, this guy's a jerk. But then they pull back a layer and you're like, oh, well, that's why he's like that.
Yeah.
Oh, he really does mean well. And, the cold heart melts just a little bit and warms up.
One of the things I think is cool about Dan Connor, or I'm sorry, not Dan Connor. I think him and Dan Connor would actually be good friends.
Yeah. I could see Dan Connor being the real son of Jack Arnold,
I could
right?
see that, yeah. But the thing that I think is cool about Jack Arnold is, it's easy for a person to have hopes and dreams, and then something happens out of their control, and it sets you on a different path than what you were wanting to go with. And his backstory is actually pretty long, but it's cool. One of the things that I like about it is that you see in the show, like some days when he gets home from work, he's just outside looking through a telescope at the stars, and like that's like his like winding down time, and that's part of his like his past and like what he wanted to do, and just his humanity.
There's a really good episode of Wonder Years where it's take your son to work day, or take your kid to work day. And so Kevin goes to his middle management office job that Jack had worked his way up from like the loading dock, and he's now middle management, but like he can't, his boss basically just takes everything out on him in front of his kid. And it's funny because Kevin had been wondering, like, one, what does my dad do? And two, why does he always come home so upset? He'll come in and like just rush and throw, wrangle his tie down and throw his briefcase away, and just not talk. And he has that experience, and he watches his dad just get beat down again and again at the office, and he feels so bad for him, and that when he comes back home, he acts just like his dad, coming through the house and wrenching his tie off and throwing his stuff and being grumpy. And he lived life in his shoes for a day, and can understand his dad a little bit better. The stuff he goes through to provide for his family.
Yes, and ultimately that's the reason that he does everything he does, is to be able to take care of his family.
That's right. He's a gruff man, but he's a good dad ultimately, I think.
Who played him?
Yeah, this was played by Dan Lauria, and you would recognize him. He's been in other things, mostly television, but this is one of those roles where like I can't picture anybody else as Jack Arnold. He was so good in this role of the gruff husband and father, and this is what he's most known for, of course. But so Dan Lauria played Jack on TV, and it's part of the Wonder Years, which aired on ABC in January of 1988 and all the way through May of 1993 for 6 seasons and 115 episodes. So made quite a mark. And he had another distinction of this character being killed off the very last episode. Well, he wasn't killed off like on screen or anything, but they did a nice summary of where is everybody, what happened to everybody. And then like in passing, they're like, Wayne moved into the family business after Dad died 2 years ago. And you're like, what? This character you love, the show's about to end, and they're like, oh yeah, he dies.
Yeah, he retires, starts his own business, and then dies 2 years later.
Yeah, so awful. So, I mean, it's realistic, that kind of stuff does happen, but it was a gut punch because you grew to love this guy so much. But anyway, all right. So Jack Arnold at the number 7 seed versus Phil Banks at the number 2 seed. I don't think it's much of a competition. I wouldn't really want Jack Arnold as my dad.
Right.
But I could totally pull in a bear hug for Uncle Phil.
Yes. Yeah. So I agree. Phil, I think Uncle Phil takes it here. So
yeah. So we, our seating has been kind of on point, sorry, we haven't really mixed it up with any upsets yet, but that's yet to be seen because now we're rolling into the semifinals.
Oh my gosh. And Preston, I cannot believe it. So we have now our matchups are going to be Mike Brady versus Jason Seaver and Dan Connor versus Phil Banks.
Woo!
These are some mighty, mighty battles.
Yeah, the number 1 and number 4 seed versus the number 3 and number 2 seed. Man, this is like Gonzaga versus Duke or something. It's crazy.
I know. All right. Well, I say we just get right into it.
Let's
and
do it.
We don't have to, we've seen the clips.
We've seen the clips. We
We've
don't need to
talked about
revisit
the
it
dads.
that much. Who's your go for? Who goes ahead? Number 1, Mike Brady versus number 4, Jason Seaver.
Man, while I think it's neat, I think Jason Seaver is the evolution of Mike Brady, right? But there's something about the original.
He's on a pedestal. I'm torn because he's too idyllic.
Yeah.
I don't think he's authentic enough.
Okay.
I think that Jason Seaver is a much more authentic interpretation of the modern father.
Yes. Okay.
So I'm really struggling here, Brian.
All right. Well, how about this? Would you rather watch The Brady Bunch or Growing Pains?
I would rather watch Growing Pains.
Yeah, me too.
So Mike Brady, you're one of the OGs.
Mm-hmm.
But you're getting thrown off your throne by Jason Seaver, an upset at number 4.
There it goes, number 4
Wow.
taking on the number 1.
Wow, what an upset!
I know, but I mean, I think I think it all makes sense. It makes total sense to me.
Yeah, well, it always felt a little dated watching the Brady Bunch, even though we were close in time to that era. But Jason Seaver was just a lot more relatable, a little more fun.
And I would say, I understand it's a sign of the times, but, Jason Seaver had fun with his kids, but he dealt with some really serious stuff, because, that was during that time period where you had I'm not going to say they had to have episodes about drugs, but they dealt with some serious stuff, like the Seaver family. I can't remember their daughter's name. Do you remember their daughter's name?
Oh gosh, I know the actress Tracy Gold.
Yeah, so she was dating a guy, and it was a serious relationship. They got drunk, and he drunk drove. They got in a wreck, and he died. And so there was a whole storyline about dealing with that and the grief of that, and how she wasn't dating because she didn't want to open up to somebody again and lose them again like that. And so you had some real heartfelt discussions between him and her about that. You had cocaine talks with Mike. So yeah, I don't know. I think that show. I think that dad takes it in that one.
That's you heard it here first, folks. Jason Seaver's moving on to the final round. But let's see, who can we advance between the matchup between number 3 Dan Connor from Roseanne versus number 2 seed Phil Banks from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
What do you think?
Gosh, these are 2 lovable big guys.
Yeah, they're both great dads.
They are both great dads. And I don't know.
So, these dads, similar to Jason Seaver, they both they were both funny and the butt of a lot of jokes, but they also dealt with serious family stuff, you know, and they had to have those conversations with their kids. Both of them, there are some very serious episodes of both of these shows where they were a major part of.
So we're here's another way to think, though. We're framing it as a TV dad, right?
Yeah.
And while I think that Dan Connor is more authentic dad, as compared to real life.
Yeah.
For the boxes that you need to check to be a TV dad, I think Phil Banks checks more of those boxes.
I can see that. And I will say Dan Connor that character had like a weird evolution over time where he became a more realistic dad.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning he was like, when he had the shaggy hair,
He was just like a lug.
Yeah, and like there wasn't a lot of development for him and stuff like that. He was just kind of a background character because Roseanne was the show, right? And so whereas Uncle Phil, I feel like he was a focus for the entire run of that show. So
Yeah.
All right, so Uncle Phil takes it.
Uncle Phil takes it.
All right.
He's our highest seed. That's still left in the game. So that leaves our final matchup between the number 2 seed, Phil Banks, and the number 4 seed, Jason Seaver. Wow.
Well,
what do you say?
So here's what I say. I think Phil Banks takes this.
I think Phil Banks takes it.
All right.
I think Phil Banks dunks on Jason Seaver.
Yeah.
And puts him back in his office.
Wow.
Think about that for a while,
Yeah.
Jason Seaver.
It's amazing. And, I wonder, like, going into this, who did you think was going to win before we did everything?
Before we talked it all out, I thought Willie Tanner was going to take it all the way. No. I let Brian. So Brian and I picked 4 each. What were your 4 picks? Remind us.
Mine were Willie Tanner, Carl Winslow, Phil Banks, and
Jason Seaver.
Yeah, Jason Seaver. Sorry, I skipped over it.
And so that leaves that my picks were Mike Brady and Dan Connor, Stephen Keaton, and Jack Arnold. Now, I thought Jack Arnold would rank a little higher. Stephen Keaton would rank a little lower. But I thought that Jason Seaver might be a little higher, and I thought Dan Connor might have a chance to take it all.
Yeah. When I saw your list, I picked my 4 very early on. Out of my 4, I assumed that Carl Winslow was going to do very well.
Yeah.
And he was knocked out in the first round. But he wasn't. Yeah, he was. He was knocked out in the first round. And so when I saw your list, I was like, man, I just don't know who's going to take it. And so I seeded them. I seeded these people. And the reason that I seeded Steve Keaton above Jack Arnold is because, like, Jack Arnold's, like, kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, and like, even though I wasn't as familiar with Steve Keaton, like, I know that show had a lot of impact, and that I thought that character is interesting.
Yeah.
And so that's why I seeded him higher than Jack Arnold. But
yeah, I didn't disagree with your number 1 seeding of Mike Brady, because he is like the archetype. He's like the quintessential dad.
Yeah.
And so I would not have been surprised if he took it home all the way, but I kind of didn't want him to win.
Yeah.
Because, so many other choices are better.
So
I'm happy with it.
I'm happy with it too.
Way to go, Uncle Phil.
And, it's
Uncle Dad.
I wonder if people listening or people watching, like, people get so angry about lists, and essentially that's what these brackets are, is they wind up just being a list. I think it's interesting. I'm glad that Uncle Phil won, because, like I said, like that, Uncle Phil has some range. Like,
yeah.
He covers a lot of stuff. So.
Well, what did you think of our list? What did you think of our rankings, and who won it all? Who did we miss? Who do you think should have won? What do you think? Get in touch with us. You can contact us on Twitter. I'm at Squared Stiff on Twitter. Brian, where can they find you?
I am at BE Grantham, and you can find the show at Wayback_Attack. You can also email the show at waybackattackshow@gmail.com. So, but yeah, look forward. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you guys next time.
Take care.